Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, March 13th, 2023, and today we're going to be talking about Gallego and the Arizona Senate race in 2024 that has been on the minds of many national Democrats and local Democrats in Arizona that are concerned about the future of the Senate majority, what lies, and is decided by many battleground states, including the state of Arizona, which is proving to be very difficult for Democrats to capture in due to incumbent independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who has been a former Democrat in this state that currently has filed paperwork to run for re-election in 2024. Now, because she is formally announced, there is still heavy speculation that she may decide against running, but this video is about a potential a matchup between Ruben Gallego, the Democrat who is currently serving in the United States House of Representatives from Arizona, Carrie Lake, and other Republicans, those who have served in previous office, or not previous office, but previous candidacy profiles, such as the Republican nominee for X office. And we've also seen now Kyrsten Sinema as the independent senator altogether thrown into this three-way race. A race that Democrats are worried about because that Kyrsten Sinema, coming from the 2018 Senate race, has long been elected by a Democratic constituency. Kyrsten Sinema, who was elected first to the United States House of Representatives by a district that voted for her largely in part because of her Democratic support as a Democrat, makes a lot of sense. Then in 2018, she upset and shocked the nation by winning a state that had previously voted for the Republican Party for quite some time, and then she shocked the nation again. In 2022, she announced that she would be leaving the Democratic Party of Arizona, the Democratic Party on the national level, and that she would be serving as an independent who caucuses with the Democratic Party alongside Bernie Sanders and Angus King, though not remotely similar in ideology. Kyrsten Sinema, serving in this position, now has put the Democrats in a difficult position for 2024, but one that it looks like they may be able to get around. Now, as Ruben Gallego has entered into the race, there's been a lot of discussion about whether Kyrsten Sinema will actually enter the race as well. And largely, I think personally, the reason why she left the party was because of this potential matchup between Ruben Gallego and herself. In terms of Republican or Democratic primary polling, Kyrsten Sinema was polling leading up to her resignation from the party in the high teens. As an incumbent senator, you should be dominating the field. What we know is that 90 to 95% of congressional office holders, whether in the House or Senate, win re-election, and nearly 98% win their primaries should they decide to run. That's significant. Primarying a candidate is hard. Primarying a senator is even harder. It's much easier when you can do grassroots organizing on a statewide, but rather on a congressional district level where you're working with roughly less than 1 million people. But when it comes down to statewide elections, states with large populations, 3 to 4 million, such as Arizona, it's a lot more difficult, especially when you're working in different regions of the state. What we know from American politics and general human psyche is that you vote for the incumbent most of the time. And that is the case in most of the primaries. What happened here is because Kyrsten Sinema was so exceptionally unpopular amongst Democrats, Ruben Gallego had support. Anyone had their support. In not one matchup, even against names where people didn't necessarily recognize them, did Kyrsten Sinema lead. When to a primary with 5 different candidates, including the option to win or choose undecided, Kyrsten Sinema still did not win. When faced against a head-to-head matchup between Greg Stanton, Kathy Hoffman, Kate Gallego, who is Ruben Gallego's wife, all of them made a decision, all of these Democratic primary voters, collectively you found the majority of them chose the other option. This is where it gets difficult for Kyrsten Sinema, or where it got difficult, which largely led her to leave the party, at least in terms of my eyes. The reason being, if you lose a primary for a congressional election, House, or Senate, you cannot run as an independent and get on the ballot. The state of Arizona has what we call sore loser laws, where you can't all of a sudden screw over the incumbent party or whichever party that chose not to elect you in the primary. So what did she do? She decided to leave. And now there's a consideration that she may run under this new party from the organization called No Labels, an organization that is known for its centrist ideology, for propositioning up Sinema and Joe Manchin, much favorites of the Senate in their eyes. So No Labels now gaining a ballot spot in the Arizona race in 2024, whether House, Senate, whatever it might be, presidential, they can run a candidate, and they will for sure have ballot access due to the organizing that they've done in this state. They're starting early. It looks like they may be gearing up for a Senate bid in Arizona. Maybe Kyrsten Sinema is gearing up for a bid under this race. But we haven't really hit the point. The title of this video is talking about how Democrats, are in a position to do well as a result of the 2024 three-way race. That they may be able to lead when it comes down to head-to-head matchups or lead overall the three-way race itself. What these polls show is that Ruben Gallego, when faced up against many other candidates, takes a lead. But especially a lead against candidates like Blake Masters and Kari Lake, Republicans who failed to win their elections in the 2022 midterm elections. And Kari Lake, of all of them, is probably the worst candidate that Republicans could nominate for this race. She's extreme beyond compare. And had she been in Blake Masters' position against a candidate as strong as Mark Kelly, I honestly think that she would have lost worse than Blake Masters, even though she got closer in the governor's election. I can't say Katie Hobbs ran a campaign better than Mark Kelly. But regardless, though, Kari Lake loses 10 points against Ruben Gallego in a head-to-head matchup. But our concern here is this three-way race. Now, Kari Lake, as a potential candidate, I know it might seem extreme that a failed candidate from 2022 is considering running again. Well, for one, we've heard from advisors close to Karen Taylor Robson, who lost the primary to Kari Lake in the governor election in 2022, that she is considering a Senate bid. We've heard from advisors close to Blake Masters that he is considering a Senate bid. And we know now, more recently in the news, that Kari Lake, this was 17 hours ago, is considering another Senate run, is interacting with people on Twitter and other news sources, saying that she is considering a bid, that she might throw her hat into the ring, especially that there might be a spoiler in the race. But that question about whether or not the spoiler will actually exist definitely comes down to whether Kyrsten Sinema decides to run or if voters will actually bite when it comes down to this race. Now, I do think Democrats are weakened when Kyrsten Sinema decides to run. I think that what we are seeing in these three-way races is that there are voters who are shifting over to Kyrsten Sinema currently, but don't necessarily choose her overall. You see, the independent candidate here, being Kyrsten Sinema, peaks no more than 22% in these potential matchups. A lot of that support seems to be coming from both sides of the aisle. In terms of matchups between Ruben Gallego and Blake Masters, roughly a very similar amount stay undecided, a difference of 5 points. But what you find is that he reduces from 34, or Blake Masters reduces down from 32 to 24%. Ruben Gallego reduces from 43% down to 33%. Kyrsten Sinema pulls from the undecided category, that's 22%, and you still have a significant chunk of the electorate that is ultimately undecided. But in all of these races, Ruben Gallego comes ahead. And I think it comes from the fact that Kyrsten Sinema's base no longer relies on the Democratic Party, at least to the extent that it once did. She's still pulling away more from Democrats than she is Republicans. That's a problem that needs to be solved moving forward. But I think Democrats should be quite surprised. In fact, happy. Results aren't more in their for the Republican favor than what they are right now, which aren't good results for the GOP. The GOP should be dominating in this field, and I think there's a few reasons they aren't. A lot of it has to do with the unelectability of Republicans, but also the fact that Kyrsten Sinema has positioned herself in such a way that most of her approval rating, most of her happy constituency comes from the other side of the aisle. When you look at the polling data in terms of what people like or whether or not they view favorably Sinema or Sinema or Gallego or other candidates or other people serving in this position, what you find here is that the total favorable amongst, in terms of the state, Ruben Gallego is at 35%, but largely because a lot of people don't know who he is. But in terms of people who do know Kyrsten Sinema, she is a statewide elected official, 47% of people disapprove of Kyrsten Sinema, 27% compared to Ruben Gallego. Now her approve or favorability rating is slightly higher, but only by 2% with so much more name recognition. The overall net for Kyrsten Sinema, -10. The net for Ruben Gallego is 8. But here's the thing. Sinema, I think, is a huge threat, but Republicans aren't exactly sending their best. Truly and honestly, the Republican Party needs something differently in 2024 compared to what they did before. Because 2022 was a crap show. It was not a good result in Arizona, in Pennsylvania, in many other states, Wisconsin, right? In the Nevada Senate race. What you found is that these states, the states that were supposed to be red wave states the GOP easily won, did not happen. Why? because the states decided to vote against extremism, vote against Trumpism, and it showed heavily. Arizona being one of those states that rejected Kari Lake, that rejected Blake Masters, that rejected Donald Trump. So looking at the 2024 race, again, those who are considering here, let's look. Kari Lake, Blake Masters. Well, let's see how Arizona voters view these candidates. Lake and Masters are more well known than Karen Taylor Robson and Ruben Gallego, largely because they both both Lake and Masters got to the general election ballot. The overall net negative for Kari Lake is negative 22. The overall net negative for Blake Masters is negative 24. 54% of voters disapprove of Blake Masters. Just 30% approve. Kari Lake, the numbers are 55% disapprove, 33% approve. The point is, these are vastly unpopular people, and Kyrsten Sinema, as someone who is despised by her own party as evident by the primary polls, by the opinion polls, still seems to be doing better than Kari Lake and Blake Masters. But the candidate who does it best is Ruben Gallego, the now presumptive Democratic nominee for the 2024 Senate race in the state of Arizona. That is a problem. In terms of the favorabilities by party, you can see here, Kyrsten Sinema is at negative 19 by Democrats, but only negative 4 by Republicans and negative 6 by independents. Ruben Gallego on the flip side, negative 33 amongst Republicans. Kyrsten Sinema serving at negative 4 amongst Republicans, yet negative 19 amongst Democrats tells you everything you need to know about why she's still in this race and why she doesn't pull from the Democratic Party as much as she should. As the independent here, we should have thought and did think for a while that no matter what, she was tanking the Democratic Party. And I still think she withdraws a lot of the core support Democrats need to win. But she doesn't do it in a way that should she decide to run, that I would write off the Democrats entirely. Before I would have. And maybe it was a naive choice, maybe it was the wrong choice, and now in hindsight, it was. But on the flip side, I look at it and I say, what we see here is that the Democratic Party still has support, even with Sinema in the race, to an extent that isn't shifting everyone to the GOP, that isn't pulling from the Democratic base solely and entirely. There is something to be said, the fact that Ruben Gallego can lead. Now, don't get me wrong. 31% is not a winning number. You can't win a three-way race with 31%. You lose in that circumstance, and a lot of this undecided vote will shift to the GOP. But I also expect a lot of that independent vote to be forced to make a decision between the Democrats and the Republicans, and I do think, based off prior voting history, that they will go to Ruben Gallego. I think it'll be a very close race. I think Kyrsten Sinema will serve in many people's eyes as this potential spoiler, and I think the Republican Party's chances of winning increase, obviously, with Kyrsten Sinema in the race. You see here that in these head-to-head matchups, Ruben Gallego against some of these candidates is leading by double digits. And what we know from very early on polls, especially by OH Predictive Insights, a lot of them are right. Look back at 2019. Looking at those polls, head-to-head matchups between Biden and Trump. Biden leading by 3. What happens? Biden won by less than 1, but still won the race, off by maybe 2 points. You see the early polls from 2021. What happens? They said that Mark Kelly was going to win by 5-6 points. He won by 5-6 points. You look at the Senate polls from 2020. They said Mark Kelly was going to defeat Martha McSally. Didn't do so by as much of a margin that he should have, but it was still right in terms of the overall predictor. And what they are telling us now, a year off from the heavy intensity of the campaign season in 2024, that Ruben Gallego, the Democrat, will win the 2024 Senate in Arizona. I trust these numbers. Not enough that I'd say definitively and 1,000% Arizona's going blue, but enough to a point that I would absolutely believe it if you told me in a year from now, in a year and a half from now, we'd be watching on election night and Gallego won by 5 to 6 points. In a three-way race, though, by 1 to 2 points, I would not question it. Before, I might have. And I think a lot of these new numbers are really reaffirming our very, very good understanding, not only of Democrats, but also Republicans and the electorates that surround them, that the Republican Party is not a popular party when they prop up people like Kari Lake, like Blake Masters, or anyone that is cut from the same cloth. They've been rejected once in 2022, and they absolutely could be rejected again, even with a quote-unquote spoiler party being Kyrsten Sinema in the 2024 Senate race, because the data doesn't lie. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen is a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.